Njabala, a tale of love, loss, and longing. Njabala was born during the season when the hills were at their greenest, and the streams ran full from the rains. The old women of the village would later say that she arrived in the world wrapped in blessings, for her mother had waited so many years for a child that people had nearly stopped asking when she would become a parent. Nakato had endured the quiet pain of watching younger women marry after her and fill their homes with children while her own compound remained silent. She had prayed until her knees ached, cried until her eyes swelled, and made promises to God that only a desperate woman could understand. So when Njabala was finally born, Nakato loved her with a devotion so fierce that it frightened even those who understood her suffering. The child was not simply a daughter in her eyes. She was the answer to years of longing, years of loneliness, years of feeling incomplete. From the moment she could walk, Njabala's feet barely touched hardship because her mother stood between her and every difficulty that life attempted to place in her path. As Njabala grew, the difference between her and the other girls became impossible to ignore. While daughters her age woke before dawn to sweep compounds and help prepare food, Njabala slept peacefully beneath warm blankets. While they balanced water pots on their heads and walked long distances beneath the sun, she wandered through fields gathering wildflowers and chasing butterflies. Whenever someone suggested that the girl should begin learning household responsibilities, Nakato would smile and wave away the criticism. One afternoon, as several women sat peeling cassava beneath a mango tree, an elderly neighbor finally spoke what everyone else had been thinking. "Nakato," she said gently, "a child is not protected by making life easy. A child is protected by teaching her how to survive when you are no longer there." The words hung in the air longer than anyone expected. For a moment, even Nakato seemed unsettled, but then she looked toward her daughter, who was laughing while trying to catch a bright blue butterfly, and her face softened. "When I look at her," she replied quietly, "I remember every year I spent praying for her. Let me enjoy my blessing while I can." The women exchanged glances but said nothing more. Some lessons cannot be forced upon people. They arrive only when life delivers them. By the time Njabala reached womanhood, she had become known throughout the neighboring villages for her beauty. Travelers carried stories about her appearance from one trading center to another. Young men found excuses to pass through her village, hoping for a glimpse of the girl whose smile was said to brighten even the gloomiest day. Yet behind all that beauty lay a dangerous weakness. She could not properly cook a meal. She struggled to light a cooking fire. She had never spent a full day working in a garden. She could not carry a heavy water pot without stopping to rest. These shortcomings remained hidden because Nakato continued protecting her. Whenever work became difficult, her mother quietly stepped in. Whenever mistakes were made, her mother corrected them before anyone noticed. Njabala never questioned this arrangement because she had known nothing else. She believed life was naturally gentle. She believed people were naturally patient. She believed love would always appear whenever she needed it. Such beliefs are easy to hold when someone spends years shielding you from reality. Then sickness entered their home. At first it seemed harmless, little more than a cough that lingered longer than expected. Nakato brushed aside concerns, insisting that she simply needed rest. But the cough deepened. Her strength faded. Days that once passed in constant activity became days spent sitting quietly beneath the shade of trees, staring into the distance. Soon she could no longer hide the truth. The woman who had once moved tirelessly from sunrise to sunset now struggled to complete even simple tasks. Njabala noticed the changes, but refused to believe they meant anything serious. "You will be better soon," she said one evening while helping her mother lie down on her mat. "The healer said the herbs should help." Nakato smiled sadly, the kind of smile people wear when they know something others refuse to see. "My daughter," she said softly, "there are some journeys herbs cannot stop." Njabala immediately began crying. "Please don't talk like that," she pleaded. "You will recover." Nakato reached out and touched her face. "I hope so," she whispered, though her voice carried no conviction. As the weeks passed, Nakato's fears shifted away from her own condition and settled entirely upon her daughter. One night, while the village slept and crickets sang outside, she called Njabala to sit beside her. The young woman obeyed, wiping tears from her eyes because she had spent most of the evening crying in secret. Nakato studied her carefully. She saw beauty, kindness, innocence, and love. What she did not see was preparedness. "There is something I need to tell you," she began quietly. "No matter what happens, you must learn to endure hardship. Do not run from it. Do not hide from it. Life will ask things of you that it has never asked before." Njabala shook her head fiercely. "Nothing is going to happen." But Nakato continued, "Listen to me. A mother can carry her child only for a little while. Eventually, the child must walk alone." The tears returned immediately. "Then don't leave me," Njabala whispered. "I don't know how to walk alone." Nakato closed her eyes briefly because there was no answer she could give that would ease either of their fears.
If you're drawn to stories where history meets mystery, where the wind carries more than just dust, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to Pearl Mystic Tales for powerful African legends, untold histories, and stories that linger long after the screen goes dark.
The day Nakato died felt strangely ordinary. The sun rose as it always did. Birds sang. Neighbors prepared breakfast. Somewhere children laughed while playing. The world showed no sign that it was about to break a young woman's heart. Njabala had fallen asleep beside her mother's mat during the night. When she woke, she noticed something unusual. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Her mother's breathing, which had become shallow and labored in recent weeks, was gone. For several moments she simply stared, unable to understand what she was seeing. Then reality struck. A sound escaped her throat unlike anything she had ever heard before, a cry so raw and painful that neighbors later admitted it haunted them for years. People came running. Women gathered around her. Men spoke in hushed voices outside. But none of it mattered. Njabala felt as though the world had split open beneath her feet. Throughout the funeral, she moved like someone trapped in a dream. Faces blurred together. Words lost meaning. Even when the grave was filled and mourners began drifting away, she remained standing beside it, staring at the fresh mound of soil and waiting for her mother to somehow emerge and explain that a terrible mistake had been made. The weeks after the funeral revealed how quickly sympathy fades when life continues moving forward. Relatives visited often at first, bringing food and offering comfort. But gradually their conversations shifted. They stopped asking how she was coping and began discussing practical matters. Who would care for her? What would happen to the property? When should marriage negotiations begin? Njabala listened to these discussions with growing panic. She wanted to grieve. She wanted time. She wanted the world to slow down long enough for her to catch her breath. Instead, it seemed determined to keep moving. One evening, she overheard several elders discussing a prospective husband. Their voices drifted through the window while she sat inside. "The young man has land," one said. "His family is respectable," said another. "And the bride price he offers is generous." Njabala felt cold. They were discussing her future as though she were livestock being evaluated at market. Later that night, she sat beside her mother's grave and whispered, "Mama, they are planning my life, and I do not know how to stop them. If you were here, you would know what to do. You always knew what to do." Months later, the marriage was arranged. The groom, a hardworking young man named Ssemanda, arrived with his family bearing gifts and promises. He was not cruel. He was not evil. He was simply a man shaped by a world very different from the one Nakato had created for her daughter. He valued labor. He respected discipline. He believed every member of a household should contribute. During the wedding celebrations, he treated Njabala politely, even kindly. But beneath that kindness lay expectations she could not yet see. When the day finally arrived for her to leave her childhood home, she broke down completely. As relatives loaded her belongings and prepared the journey, She clung to the doorway and sobbed. Every corner of the compound contained memories. Every tree reminded her of her mother. Even the wind seemed familiar there. Before leaving, she walked one final time to the grave. Kneeling beside it, she placed both hands on the soil and whispered through tears, "Mama, I am going somewhere I do not want to go. If you can hear me, stay close to me. I am afraid." Then she rose and walked away, not realizing that the life she was leaving behind would soon seem like a paradise she could never return to. The journey to her husband's village took most of the day. By the time they arrived, the sun was beginning to sink behind the hills. Everything felt unfamiliar. The paths were different, the houses looked different, even the voices sounded different. During her first few days, everyone treated her warmly. Relatives visited, neighbors welcomed her. Her mother-in-law smiled often. For a brief moment, Njabala allowed herself to believe that perhaps her fears had been exaggerated. Then the fourth morning arrived. Long before sunrise, someone knocked firmly on the door. Confused and half asleep, she opened it to find her mother-in-law standing outside. "Wake up," the older woman said. "There's work to do." Njabala followed her outside, expecting a simple task. Instead, she found herself handed a broom and instructed to sweep the compound before anyone else woke. She stood there awkwardly, unsure where to begin. The older woman watched for a moment before frowning. "What are you doing?" she asked. Njabala hesitated. I don't really know." The silence that followed felt unbearable. For the first time in her life, she saw genuine disbelief on another person's face. That morning became the first of many humiliations. Every task exposed another weakness. She swept poorly, she carried water awkwardly, she burned food while cooking, she washed clothes incorrectly. Each mistake brought criticism, and each criticism felt like a wound. By evening, she sat alone behind the house, crying into her hands. The life she had entered seemed determined to reveal every lesson she had never learned. When Ssemanda found her, he sighed heavily and sat beside her. "You cannot cry every time something goes wrong," he said. "I am trying," she replied through tears. "Then try harder," he answered. The words were not shouted. They were not intended to be cruel. Yet they hurt because they lacked understanding. He saw a wife who needed training. He did not see an orphaned daughter trying desperately to survive in a world she no longer recognized. And it was there, sitting behind the house with tears running down her face and the weight of loneliness pressing upon her chest, that the first fragments of her song began to form. Not as a performance, not as poetry, simply as a conversation with the only person she still trusted. Softly, almost, she began speaking to her mother through melody, telling her about the heavy water pots, the endless chores, the criticism, the exhaustion, and the aching emptiness left behind by her absence. She sang because talking made her cry too much. She sang because silence felt unbearable. Most of all, she sang because every note made her feel, if only for a moment, that the distance between herself and her mother had become slightly smaller. And as darkness settled over the village that evening, the young woman who had once believed life would always be gentle sat alone beneath the stars and sang to the dead, not knowing that the song would follow her for the rest of her life.